Hello friends, and welcome to my channel. In this video I'm going to show you how to draw this adorable little capybara. If you're new here, my name is Evie. Let's get started. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make just a little circle or a frame, and this is basically what I want my capybara to be framed inside of. And by making the circle at first, you kind of have an idea of the composition so that you can keep your drawing tidy. Now, of course, you can stray from this later. There's no reason why you can't do that, but I really love having that little space for my drawing. Capybaras are quite cool shapes because the whole animal kind of becomes almost a triangle. So I like to just make this kind of teardrop shape to start, and then I'm going to take that layer and just make it less visible so that we have something nice and clean to work with. I love to start with the head, so I'm going to do a big circle for the head. Don't worry about your circle being perfect. Nature is not perfect when it comes to shapes. So our wildlife art does not have to be either. So now that we have our circle, a capybara's face is actually kind of like rectangular, like this. And that's what I want to achieve in this drawing, but we're doing a bit of a perspective here. So what I want to do is make this portion here into a rectangle-ish shape. So I'm following my previous triangle sketch that I have in the back. You don't have to, but I like to do that. And I'm just coming out like this. At this point, it's almost looking like a moomin a little bit. Because it's got that kind of oblong nose. I will say with a capybara, one of the things you have to keep in mind is a lot of their unique appearance comes from this nose being slightly rectangular. So that's the difference between, say, a hippo and a capybara. So now we're going to go up to the head, and you see where it's very round here. I want to just make that a bit more rectangular again, so I'm just emphasizing a bit of a corner up here. And then we're gonna just work out a little square in the front here to represent the snout. Now let's clean this up a little bit. I'm grabbing my eraser, and I like to use that round brush, the paint brush for my eraser. So that was under painting and then round brush. And I'm just gonna go in and get rid of some of these lines so that we can see what we're doing. Hello, capybara. We're now going to make the nose, and here's one thing that I learned in art school is that if you're not entirely sure where to place your nose, all you have to do in a rectangle or a square is to draw across like that, and then you get a line down the middle. Now you could of course go in and just do that for your nose, but we are doing like cutesy, kawaii capybaras. So I'm removing all the lines except the center one that we drew. Keep in mind this is perspective, so you do want to have, like, ideally this side should be a little bit shorter than this side. Or a little bit, yeah, like this one is wider than this one. And now we're going to draw a little V for the nose, and we're going to draw that quite far up on the face. There we go. And for now, let's just add a little bit of shade to emphasize that nose. Now this line here, you can actually keep and just cut off a little bit at the bottom and draw another little V for the mouth. If you wanted to do it extra cute as well, you can come up and draw the mouth here. And you can have any kind of mouth you want, you know, like a smiley. I quite like to make a little O. I just think that's a really cute mouth. But for now, let's stick with a kind of classic capybara look, and I'm going to use the little V. And now I'm going to just erase a little bit of these lines around the snout because I don't want to see them too much. It's good to keep them a little bit just for your reference. Now you might see that although we have these nice kind of angular shapes here, this is a circle and it doesn't really give capybara vibes. So I'm going to make that a little bit more translucent, erase it a little bit, and we're now going to start doing the body. So the first thing I want to do is to actually come up here and decide where my forehead is going to be for the capybara. So this is one of my angles, and they actually have quite a tiny forehead, or like quite a narrow forehead thing up here. So I'm going to put my other angle here, and then I'm going to come all the way down to the bottom in just a curved shape. Don't worry too much about this shape right now, but if you do a curve, you're on your way. We're getting there. Let's add some fun features, because it's more fun to finish our drawing if we can see a little bit of what's happening. So let's start with the ears. For the capybara, we're gonna do a slightly rectangular shape again, like this. So they're a little bit taller at the tip than they are at the bottom, but it's still in essence a rectangle. Let me move that over there in case you want it as a reference. And yeah, I'm just gonna go in now and give my capybara 2 ears. There's a bit of a risk here when you draw capybara ears, is that you don't want them to be too big, because then they can come across as a mouse or a bear. One of the cute things about capybaras is that they have that rectangular head and then these tiny ears on top, which I quite like, and then inside I'm just adding like a slightly rounded rectangle again. That will be the inside of the ear. And then I'm gonna add the second ear, and that's gonna be behind the head. You have a few options here. You could do it like this, just an arrow. Or you could keep that rectangle shape and just shade that a bit. And it's actually now, when drawing my ears, that I feel like this angle is not entirely perfect for my drawing. So I'm gonna draw in my ear where I want it to be first. I'm doing the exact same process as the shape for this one. I'm changing the angle a little bit, but that's only based on like my preference. And then I'm just gonna erase a little bit of this angle, and I'm gonna fix it just ever so slightly so it comes out a little bit more. For the sake of the sketch as well, I'm just gonna shade that so that I remember that's in the background behind the head. All right, now for the eyes, I'm gonna draw a curve on the head like this. Imagine you have a circle that goes like all the way like this outside of the snout, and then in this area here I'm gonna draw a circle. If you're very new to drawing and you struggle with eyes, you can always do just a happy closed eye, or you could do a sleepy one with a few like twinkle twinkles underneath. I like to do just a triangular eye. That's what I do for all of my art. But it's entirely up to you how you want to do yours. I'm not liking my positioning of that entirely, so I am going to just mark it up and move it ever so slightly, like that. And I'd also like it to be a little bit bigger. Next up, let's just clean this up a little bit. All the lines that aren't part of our capybara, let's just tidy them up a little bit. Like that. For the body, we're going to do it as a bit of a ball shape. So imagine you have a circle that goes out here. So we're going to follow this line that we've already drawn. And then the circle is kind of going to cohere to that line. Will come out on this side. And now let's make that stronger. And there we have our little capybara bum. Now capybaras do not have tails, but they do have just like a little bit of fluff kind of gathering as a pointed thing. So if you wanted to, you could always add just like 2 lines along that curve, and it just adds a little bit of character to capybara. Now let's talk legs. So let's imagine that there is a stomach and a body, a stomach and a body, a body with a stomach going like that. So we're gonna have like a little curve down here, and this will be the foot. And imagine there's a triangle or like a diagonal line going all the way here, but we're just drawing it like that. And I'm not entirely happy with that, so I'm going to do it again. I'm going to do, there you go, a bit thicker. And then I'm going to connect it to the foot, which is an extra line. So now you got this slightly curved diagonal line, and you got another fairly straight diagonal line, and then you got this little curve. And to emphasize the foot, I'm just going to add a little bit of shade to remind myself where that is. Now, tidying up these lines a little bit, just getting rid of anything we don't need at the moment. I want to make two legs here, so I want to have one that kind of sticks up as if the capybara is lifting it, and another one that's touching the ground. So I'm going to draw a line going down like that, and that is where the first leg is going to be. So I'm just making like a little U shape at the bottom, a little curve. And I'm going to bring that just a little bit further up, roughly there. And then you see this curve that we drew originally. I'm going to make that come into under this leg. Just like that. And then we're going to remove our leftovers down here. And just emphasize that leg a little bit better. I'm gonna just emphasize the foot here as well with a little oval or a little curved line and some shade. And then I want to come out here and make a leg, and that's going to be a shape sort of like that. So we're going to come out and we're going to make a bent leg, and you never see like the inner bend, you only see the outer one. And then again we're going to use a little bit of a curve to shade. And there you have it. This is your first sketch for your capybara. Again, I'm tidying up these lines. And now I'm going to get rid of all these like angles and stuff like that. And also get rid of my background sketch for a bit. Now that we have our initial sketch, we are going to make a new layer. And with our old layer, our first sketch, we're going to just lower the opacity. And now I'm going to change to black. I'm still working in the 6B pencil, and now we're just going to rework these shapes a little bit. Alright, so for my drawing, I just feel like this face is a little bit too oblong, so I'm gonna just come up here. I love this line, so I'm gonna keep it. I'm gonna make it shorter. I'm gonna come down here a little bit and just emphasize that rectangular feel. And here again at the bottom, nice rectangle. Also, don't be afraid to use like very strict or very hard lines like that. You could even go like shoo. Because when you're working with something that's predominantly quite curvy, having one like straight line like that is just so powerful. So I want us to do that at the bottom here as well. We're gonna just draw a straight line like that. I'm going to erase most of it. But for my leg, I want to confine that leg to that straight line as if it was ground. And for this leg, I'm making it a bit thicker, but essentially following all of our original outlines. Also, you could totally do a more realistic capybara leg. I just like to do the kind of cutesy, plain, simplified ones. Now for the front leg, again, we're gonna stick with this little straight line, but I'm gonna change the positioning of this foot. So before it was pointing down, and now I'm just gonna have it point a little bit like the toes are tipping forwards. Sorry, the toes are pointing forwards, losing my words here. And this line I'm going to keep pretty much the same. Removing this little line again. And oh yeah, the oval for our foot. Again, I'm just doing that. It's a cutesy kawaii drawing. It doesn't have to be, well, of course it's not accurate. That's not the style, is it? And I'm actually with this face again. You will always find me going back to the face. It is the hardest part of a drawing, but sometimes it's hard to know exactly what you want it to look like if you don't have the rest of it. For the bum, we're not really changing anything. I'm gonna adhere to that exact line that I had before. And I love those two little like hairlines, so I'm gonna add those. This leg, I'm gonna take it away and we're gonna simplify it even more. You could keep that leg, you could totally keep that leg and it will be absolutely fine. But I'm just gonna make a curve. I think that works nicer for this type of style. And then back with our little oval, shade the leg so we don't forget what it is. I'm gonna bring this leg up a bit more. And then this line here, I don't like that it starts down here, so I'm actually going to bring this curve down a bit like that. Do you see what we're doing here? So before we had our line go quite far out and the chest was kind of dipping into the ground, even though like a capybara wouldn't walk around dragging his chest on the ground. So the chest is now a bit higher and this line has come in a little bit. And now we're gonna sort of trace this invisible line down to the belly. I do want the belly to kind of be touching the ground almost. So essentially it's gonna be a curve like that, just following that around. There we go. And if you wanted to, you could add a little bit of an indication of the back leg and then just shade that. And now for this leg, I like the way we drew it previously. So I'm gonna bring it in, basically tracing it, and then I'm gonna select it and just move it a bit further to the body. If you want to, you can also like rotate a little bit. I'm gonna bring it down, and there we go. Next, let's just shade. We can keep track of where our legs are. For the ears, I'm gonna make it a little bit smaller and wider. So I'm coming up a little bit higher here, if I zoom in. Coming up just a little bit higher, but I'm not gonna go all the way out like we did before. There we go. That feels a bit more capybara to me. And instead of having that full line that I had before, I'm actually just gonna go up with one like that. And then this area here, I'm probably just gonna do that in color rather than have a full outline. But you could go like all the way around if you wanted to do that. Absolutely you could. Now for the other ear, I'm just gonna keep that exactly like we had it before. That's amusing to me because this was the ear I thought I would want to change and I was quite happy with that one. There we go. Now let's move on to the next. So if you see, we had a little like sketch line here on the capybara's neck, and I like the idea of that neckline being indicated, because if I hide my sketch completely, there's nothing there. So what I'm gonna do is just add two little lines here, and that just adds a little bit of an indication that there is something happening here. You could also do some wrinkles if you wanted to do that, but I'm gonna stick with my two little lines. Next up, the eye. I'm gonna keep that exactly how I had it before. Eyes took me for absolute ever to learn, so don't beat yourself up if you're a beginner and you're struggling with them. Everyone struggles with them, they're hard. Okay, one thing I like to do is to add an eyebrow. I tend to just add a little dot like that, but you could of course go bigger. You could give him a bit of a grumpy, a grumpy bara. That is really cute actually. I'm gonna stick with my little dots, but if anyone wants to make a grumpy bara, go for it. Now for this one again, honestly, I'm gonna keep it exactly like we had it before. So I'm gonna draw the nose, Just leave a little bit of a shade indication of the nose. I'm gonna keep the mouth. There we go. I'm also going to leave a little bit of an indication for whiskers or freckles, whatever they are called. I like to just put 3 on each. And yeah, zoom back out. We're going to hide our underlaying sketch. And there we go. This is our capybara for the drawing we're going to make. Now we still have to do the outlines. We still have to do a bit of a decor. This is a very good start. I always feel like once I have this sketch, the rest is a breeze. So let me show you how I deal with the tulips and the grass and all of that. Remember when we did this underlying background sketch, the circle, and we also drew a triangle in it? Well, I have the capybara now, so I'm gonna just remove my triangle because it's irritating me. And once it stops being helpful, then you don't want it anymore. So now we just have our little circle. I'm gonna go back, just change the opacity back down. And now we're going to draw our tulips. The first thing I want to start, so I might just do green for the grass. We're going to do a little bit of an oval down here, which is the patch of grass that the capybara is going to sit on. There's nothing complex about this oval. I'm just drawing a plain one, and I'm using Procreate's shape tools to just position it a little bit. Like that. I'm keeping it inside of my circle, and I want it to go like behind and in front of the capybara. For now, I'm gonna leave it like that, and we're gonna add some details after. Then let's do some tulips. This is one of my favorite parts. I like to plan out with circles just where I'm gonna put the flowers. So I know I want a big one in this area, but I also know that I don't want it to block the head. I don't want it to touch the chin. I don't want it to go behind the head. I want to give my character a bit of space. So I'm gonna make a sphere here for the first one, and then I want a little bit of overlapping, so I'm going to put another one behind that again, and then I'd like a third one over here. I encourage you to stay in like the fairy tale numbers when it comes to decor, so that's, you know, the magical numbers of fairy tales, so 3, 7, 11, 13 if you want. So I'm doing 3, and then I'm also going to add 2 little buds. So one bud is going to be right around here, and another one is going to be here, and that's actually going to be in front of the capybara. Okay, so now that I have my circles, if I make the capybara invisible, you can see them a bit better. So I have 1, 2, 3, and then 2 buds as well. Now, if you want to keep things a bit tidier, you can delete the lines that you don't want to see anyway. So for example, I know that all these 3 are going to be behind my capybara, so I don't need to see them. I know that this one is going to be like the mother. It's going to overlap the one in the back. I don't want to delete anything from my capybara, so I'm not going to erase that. What I might do instead is just add a little bit of shading, you know me and shading. Alright, and now I have my tulips mapped out. I'm going to make all of these background layers just a bit more invisible or transparent. So for my main tulip, I don't necessarily want it to like be that size, but that is the area that I'm allocating to it. So with my tulips, let me show you on the side here first. With my tulips, I tend to do a circle, and then I trace over it, and all I do is draw a line like that, and then genuinely, that's it. You do 3 little wiggles like that. Those are my tulips. You could do different tulips, of course you can, but those are the simple ones that I really like to use. And if you want one that's like more 3D, you could again do a circle like this, and then do a little circle on top. This is going to be the interior, and we're now going to go our swirls again, but we're sticking with this curve, and in the back here. So essentially we have 5 petals in total, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and now I'm completing the flower in the front. And on the inside, I'm adding a few like contour lines just to give an indication that there's space inside of here. You do that with curves. You could even, if you're using different colors, you could come out with like those little yellow pollen things that tulips have. So I'm gonna leave those there for now if you want to use them as reference while we draw. But I'm gonna make a new layer to draw my tulips on now. And yeah, let's do this. Let's draw some tulips. This is why I showed you the tulips first, so that you can work on your own ones while I struggle away with mine. I think I'm gonna rotate it a bit like that and make it kind of move along with my background circle. Now I'm gonna start with my stem. Just gonna pull that. It almost looks like a tail coming out of the capybara. It's not meant to be, but that's okay. And with my leaves, it's just an oval. That is all I do. Nothing complex, just an oval and a line through like that. Try to make sure that the line doesn't get like messed up here. Like you would not want to bring that line all the way there because it just ends up with a bit of a tangle or a tangent down there. So you don't want that. Make sure there's a bit of space. I'm gonna do another tinier leaf here like that. And I just did exactly what I told you not to do, so I'm gonna correct that line a little bit. I think that leaf is gonna cover like that. There we go. No, I don't like that. I think I'm gonna bring that stem just a bit further down here. You always have, like when you do a piece like this, you have so many little details that can collide together. This is the most fun part of the process for me, is working out how I want to decorate it. Once that final animal sketch is done, you can decorate it however you want, and that is the most fun for me. Let me know in the comments where you're, like, what do you prefer doing? I got quite a thick stem here, but you can do a thin and slender one if you want, or like a big and bulky one. And now I'm gonna do my second tulip. So for that one, I think I want to have it somewhere like this. And then in the back here, I'm just adding a little bit of like leaves and things. And if there's any tiny area that would just be white, like here, I just cover it, I fill it in, and then it won't disrupt the rest of the illustration much. There we go. Oh, and down here you see, we got a bit of a tangent where this tip is hitting that petal exactly on the dot. So what I'm going to do with that is remove this curve here. I'm going to draw it again so that it doesn't hit my leaf straight on the tip. And I might also just bring the leaf tip in a little bit like that. And that way it's just a bit tidier. All right, I'm gonna hide these for a second because they are confusing me a little bit. Now for the back, again, I'm gonna do my tulip. I'm gonna keep it a bit lower than this one, and I think I want to do it like this. Now for the stem again, I'm just gonna do a big curve. I'm not doing anything special when the stem kind of hits the ground, but so I would just do something like that. But if you do want to cover it, just put a leaf in front of it. There you go, all done and sorted. Now for this one, I actually want to have a little bud here, like a tulip bud. I'm gonna do that. For the tulip buds, let me hide the back layer for a bit. For the tulip bud, again, just an oval, tidy it up a little bit. And we're gonna have this one area if you do like a little line like that, a little oval line, this is going to be scalloped, and it's essentially going to be the little part of the stem that connects the flower with the stem. So this one here would be green, and then you would have the petals kind of bundled up nice and cozy in this little flower bud. And what I will also do when I polish this, so I might as well do it now, is make it a little bit smaller so that this area here, the scalloped area, which is going to be green, sticks out more than this little petal. And I am noticing that actually this stem is colliding a bit with my bud, so I'm going to take the bud. You could take whichever one you wanted to. I'm going to take the bud and I'm going to fix it a little bit. Just move it, rotate it, get that positioning right so that nothing kind of crashes together. I do like the idea of the bud overlapping the stem of the bigger tulip. And then I'm gonna connect these stems together as if they came from the same bud, or bulb, sorry. And then I'm gonna do a few little leaves. And I think this is dragging out the illustration a little bit, so I'm just gonna bring it in, maybe like that. We're losing a little bit of tulip, but I think it's worth it. A lot of this process will be you just like drawing the things that you know, like you know where you want them to go, but sometimes it's just a bit of trial and error still. So I mean, I could plan out a perfect drawing for you guys. I could show you how I draw that step for step, but I just feel like this process where you see all the things being fine-tuned, I just feel like that is more useful, more like something that I would want to see. But let me know if I am wrong, if you just want something that's a very simple kind of paint by numbers or step-by-step thing, and I can totally do that for you. But I thought for this first tutorial, I wanted to show you how I draw, what my process is. Alright, now I do want some leaves down here as well. I think maybe one big leaf, like here, because that also gets rid of this empty space. Yeah, something like that. I like that. And now that this is done, do you remember the little oval that we made down here? I'm gonna swap back to my green. And let's do a new layer. Now this is the oval that I drew before, just copying those lines exactly. And I actually think that looks kind of perfect still. I'm gonna rotate it a little bit. There we go. I'm gonna make that, like, lower the transparency and just go in. I'm gonna hide all my other background layers now. And now we're gonna go in and we're gonna add a bit of a scalloped edge. So for me, I'm actually gonna turn this upside down because I find that it's easier to draw like that. Essentially, we're doing the same thing that we did with the tulips. I'm gonna do that. Which is just an edge like that. And if I turn that back now, you can see we got a bit of grass. I don't like how this curve turned out right here. So I'm gonna delete that and just make it a bit of a stronger one. There we go. And then in the back here, I want to make sure that our tulip leaf is emphasized as well. There we go. And then for this, make a bit of red so that's just covered. And there we go. We now have our underlying sketch for our entire capybara illustration, which is exciting. If you want to, you could also do just a little thing like that. I might do that with color later, but I'm not going to do it for the sketch. Now I'm just going to clean this up. I'm going to delete all of the underlying sketches that I don't really need anymore. I'm going to combine all of my sketches. I like to keep them as a backup in a group. And then I just duplicate the group and I flatten it. And now I want to place it around on the screen, like that. By the way, now is the time. If you need to scale up your work, you want to do it now before you start the final illustration. The outlining process is super simple. All you do is lower the opacity of your layer, you make a new layer, and now I am actually going to draw in black, believe it or not. For your outlines, you could use a whole bunch of different brushes. So we could continue with the 6B pencil, and I know that a lot of artists use the monoline brush, which is under calligraphy monoline. I'm not a fan of working with this. I wanted to show you that it's there, but for me, I'm gonna be honest, I am going to stick with the 6B pencil, which I appear to have lost. There it is. Now let's do our outlines. For this, I'm genuinely just going across our entire drawing and doing our outlines. I'm going to keep the lines a little bit thicker on the capybara than I am on the background, but that is it. Remember to check that you're in the right layer, and let's begin. Alright, for coloring, we're gonna make a new layer under our outlines, and I'll show you like a super simple way to add color. Now, originally I mentioned that we were gonna use the round brush, and yes, we will, but and before we do that, I want to go down to calligraphy, And we're gonna select the brush pen. You can use the brush pen or any other like hard-edged pen. And we're gonna select a color to use as our undertone. For the purposes of this tutorial, I'm gonna just hide my white background so that you can see a bit better. So I'm gonna go to my layer, bring the pen to the max, and basically we're gonna make a hard-edged background for us to work on. Once you finish going all around, you just drag your color and you fill it. And if you just drag the threshold up a little bit, just to make sure that you also fill along those edges here. But alright, so now that we have that, I am going to bring my white background back. And if you can see, I don't know if the camera will pick this up, but my color that I used as my background for the capybara is not entirely white. It's a little bit on the yellow beige aspect. And the reason why I do that is I just think that it adds a little bit of warmth and life to my piece. Next thing I want to do is we can now start to add a bit of color on this. So I'm going to make a new layer in Procreate directly over the layer we just made. I'm going to tap that layer and I'm going to select clipping mask. And what that does is it will allow us to paint on our drawing, but it won't capture the color outside. How cool is that? And now we're going to go back to that round brush. By the way, if you'd like to replicate my color palette, I am going to add the final one that I use for this piece as a downloadable image that you can get in the description. I think Pastelly and Subtle is what we're going to be going with today. So now that I have that color palette worked out, I'm going to start with the colors that I feel like are going to be the most like in the background. So for example, my grass down here, I know I'm going to want to have that green. Same with my tulip buds or tulip leaves, sorry, and stems. And as you can see, there's no like finesse here in my work. And now that that's over, I'm gonna go and just make my colors a little bit darker. I think the thing with color is that once you've kind of done it quite a few times, you get a good sense of the colors that you like working with. And once you get to that stage, like your entire process just gets so much easier. Color was something that I kind of avoided for the longest time. And as a result, I really struggled with it. I feel like if you post, you know, say a mediocre drawing, for example, say someone is just starting out, it's the first time they picked up a pencil and they're sharing their drawing and the drawing skills might be mediocre, but they nailed the colors. And I think anyone who sees that is going to be like, whoa, it looks really good because the colors are like, they're right, they feel good. And sometimes that's all it really takes for an illustration to pop up online. And if your art pops up online, then you have, you know, you're on a road to achieving your creative goals of, I don't know, working for a company, running your own company, taking commissions from other people. You can do so many things. And I feel like color is always like a bit of a, once you unlock that knowledge and you kind of get that knowledge built up, it is such a powerful tool. I said that I like starting with dark colors, but I feel like this part here is not as dark as I would like it. So I'm going to select all of that green and I'm going to draw only onto that green. I never used to use any of these tools that Procreate has. I never used to use any of these selection tools when I first started out. I don't know why, but they felt really like clinical to me. But as I have become more familiar with the program and more familiar with myself as an artist and my illustration style, then I feel, I don't know, I feel a lot more comfortable using them now. I think because I know how I can use them for my art rather than for something that just feels generated and things like that. I don't know. But there has been a shift, whereas I never used to use them, and now I use them all the time. Well, not all the time, but often. All right, I'm gonna deselect that. And now that we have that, I'm actually going to make a whole new layer, and that's going to be for the capybara alone. Again, I'm going to make it a clipping mask, and I'm going to select the dark color that I wanted for my capybara. I don't mind if a bit of my color kind of drips on to the background, but if you did, then you could always make like a separate, you know how we made this white shape? You could always make a separate background like that just for your capybara or your animal. There we go. And now that I have that, I can kind of work freely on the bottom layer without worrying too much about touching the top one. So I'm going to be honest, I'm not entirely happy with that pink. I think that it feels a bit too rosy. So I'm going to change the saturation just a little bit. Saturation. I'm going to shift the hue a little bit to just a slightly more red. I'm going to make it a bit more saturated and a bit darker. There we go. And then I'm going to save you this color. And now I'm going to make another color. Oh, actually no. First I need to sort out this thing. So for this bud, I want to just use this same thing here, but I'm going to use the red from over here for the actual bud. I don't mind if my color like goes out of the edges a bit. I actually think that can often make your illustration feel a bit more alive. It's one of those things, I think when I was starting out as an artist, I was really trying so hard to keep my line work perfect. And I got to a stage where it was very clean and architectural. And then after that, I went over to trying to learn how to make it more playful again. Because I felt like I sort of lost, in learning all the technical things and all the rules, I lost a bit of the playfulness. And I never expected to lose that. So that was a hard thing to learn back, but we're getting there. Again here, I don't mind going out of the lines a bit, but I think this was a bit extreme. Now that I have that, so I mean, if you have this and you're happy with it, you could technically save it out. I want to add just a little bit more color, and now, so I'm going to keep the same brush, but I'm going to lower the opacity to right around 70%. Now I'm going to color dip my color, and I'm going to move it just a little bit towards the yellow. So I have a nice like orange now. Almost a yellow, to be honest. It's not far off from the other color we had. And I'm going to go very lightly. So you almost can't see anything when you're adding the first layer. But then, as it moves up, you start to see just a little bit more. And those types of subtle gradients can be so powerful. Keep in mind as well, the brush that we use is quite it's a hard-edged one, if you see that. I am not a big fan of using blurry brushes, mainly because that's not what my art style is. I've seen plenty of artists use them very well, but it's just not my thing. And that's the cool thing when you're learning how to become a digital artist as well, is that you get to find all these things. You get to find the brushes that work for you. You get to develop your own style by drawing the things you love, trying different tutorials. When I was starting out, my gosh, like I took so many tutorials, that's for sure. Alright, so here I've just made my color a little bit darker, and I've done the exact same process that I have up here. Just gone very gently, not full pressure. And let's do the same thing here. So I want to add just a little bit of an emphasis that these leaves are separate. I'm adding a bit of darkness, a bit of shade, I suppose. And I'm not putting like a massive focus on where I put that shade. And now I'm going back to my yellow. Since the color I chose for the other one was basically this yellow, I am just color dipping that now. And for this one, I am, just very gently going in and adding loose strokes. I'm not, you know, I'm not a realistic painter. I'm just doing this as a bit of fun. There we go. And I think that's nice. Next, we're gonna work on our yellow ones. And again, I'm gonna just make my color a bit lighter. I'm gonna push slightly towards the yellow, but not too much. I don't want a green yellow. I want a soft light yellow. And I'm just going very gently here. I didn't like how thin my brush strokes were. I hope you can see this on camera. It is so light, but I still want to show you the process. There's not a huge difference between them, but you get a very subtle gradient that, even though it might not be massively visible, it will still make an impact on your audience. And now for this one, the 3D one, I'm going in and making sure that these foreground petals are a lot lighter than the background ones. And then in the background, I'm actually going to color dip my red a little bit and just add a little bit of red for a little bit of depth. There we go. And for these little things, I'm still keeping the brush at 70%. And I'm adding multiple layers of strokes. The way I move my brush is, I don't know if you've ever put on skincare products where they say to massage it in a clockwise motion. That's kind of how I do with my brush. Then at the bottom of this tulip as well, I just want to add a little bit of red. There we go. And then on this one too, just a little bit. I will say, if I was drawing this like just for myself, I would be rotating this canvas so much you wouldn't believe it. Do we have any other like canvas rotators in the crowd? That's already looking a bit more lively. Next, I'm going to color dip the stems of my flowers, and I'm going to go quite light on the green, and I'm going to pull it a bit towards yellow rather than pulling it, like continuing to pull it that way. Now I'm going to pull it a bit towards the yellow. I'm going to keep it at 70% opacity, and I'm just going to add a little bit along the edges here. And actually that feels a bit too blue for me, so I'm going to go even further into the yellow. And sometimes you just have to like keep doing that until you find something that works for you. Don't be scared as well to show a little bit of, you know, a separation like that. It's perfectly fine to have that separating line. It doesn't all have to be blended perfectly. I think it adds character to your page if you don't blend it perfectly as well. Now for the other stems, just genuinely repeating the exact same. And I'm just adding this light wherever I feel like it. You could go like proper deep into this and kind of set up your light sources in from a particular angle and make sure that all your light and shadow is hitting in the right places. I never really do that with my drawings. I tend to go a little bit by eye, but also I don't mind if it's not entirely accurate. I think it's fun, and that makes it okay. Now I've just color dipped my leaves with that darker color, and I'm just going into the stems and adding just a little bit again of that blue. And actually I think that that is a bit too light, so I'm gonna just make it a bit darker. There we go. And there, sometimes like that's all you need. And because I have that darker color now, I'm gonna go in on the leaves a bit as well. Just add a little bit of dark to those. When I first started out, color would be, it was so scary to me because I just didn't get it. I took forever, and I had a lot of artist friends who seemed to kind of just suck it in, like just take the whole color concept really, really easily. But we all had different things we struggled with. So I did very well with like shapes and outlines. And people who did very well with color sometimes struggled with that. You know, we all have our strengths and we all have our weaknesses. And it's totally okay for you to kind of find your own route in that art world. I hope this makes sense. The coloring process is, on the one hand, repetitive, but also just so therapeutic in its own way. It always feels like my reward at the end of having come up with all of my sketches and then having spent a lot of time cleaning them up and refining them, and you kind of get to the stage when you finish your outlines and you're kind of tired and exhausted. And then you get to sit there and color it in and kind of just sink into the colors. I love that about illustration. It is my favorite part, I think. Well, I prefer the sketching, I think, actually, but I love the painting too. Let me know in the comments what is your favorite part of the process. I would love to hear from you, and then I can kind of base my tutorials on that in the future as well. All right, so we got a bit more life in this piece now, and as you can see, this part here with the grass is still quite flat, so I'm just gonna color dip again my stems, like the highlight of my stems, and I'm gonna come in here. I'm gonna make my brush quite big for this, and what I'm making sure here is that under the capybara I want to make sure it's still a bit dark. So actually I'm gonna color dip my dark leaves. I'm just going to add a little bit of that. Then I'm going to color dip the lightness of my stems where I have the highlights. And again, come in on the grass. And then the outer edges of my grass. There we go. And now that that's done, at the very edges, I'm going to come down quite hard with my brush and just make some more like visible highlights. I might even shrink the brush a little bit. Like that. And there you have it. We now have the background all colored in. Oh wait, no. And then for the leaves, I am going to color dip my stem again. And like with the areas here, I want to just go in quite hard. I'm going to make that color lighter, make it a bit more yellow. And I'm going to come in here and just add a little bit of highlight, a smaller brush than that, please. Yeah, just a little bit of a highlight. In order to add a little bit of life to those leaves as well. And I've just now noticed that I forgot to add a little bit of shade here on the other stems. So I'm just going to go in, add that quickly, not too worried about where it's going, if I'm covering like other parts of my illustration. Just trying to have a bit of fun with it. And there we go. We now have the background colored in. And now in the next part of the video, the second final part of the video, we're going to focus on the capybara. After that, we only have our outlines to do. So we're almost there, guys. And you've done amazing. If you made it this far, like, you are a hard worker and you're very dedicated to your craft. So let's finish this up so you can have your final capybara. Hey! Now, believe it or not, the capybara is actually going to be a lot quicker than the background was, especially since it just has like a few colors. It's not massively complex. So I have made a new layer here. I'm going to make that a clipping mask as well. Now keep in mind, if we draw on this, we're still gonna like go over onto the other drawing. So this is not a separate entity. I don't mind that, but as I said, if you do, you can make a separate piece for your capybara. The first thing I want to do is mark out a lot of the shady areas. So this is the middle color, and I want to make that just a bit darker. and a little bit more saturated. And I'm also going to make it just a bit more red or a bit warmer. Now let's try it out for comparison. I think that's very nice. I might even go just a tiny bit darker, because keep in mind, we're not going to have it on full strength. There we go. Now I'm going to bring my brush back down to 70%. And I want to start up here with this ear, because I know that I want that to be almost entirely shaded off. So I'm just coming down here and I'm making that like relatively dark, like that. I now need to just color dip that again to clean up the forehead. There we go. And the same down here with the leg, that's going to be quite shaded. So I'm just going in with light layers, or like light pressure, and I'm layering this back up. So I'm just going in here with very light pressure and circular motions, and then I'm letting go of my brush and putting it back up. So essentially we're just adding a whole bunch of layers and building it up like that. For this area as well with the foot, I want that to be extra dark. So I'm gonna put quite a bit of pressure on here, like that. And then I'm gonna do another round, because keep in mind, our brush is not on full opacity, so you have a little bit of leeway. And there you go. Gonna repeat that process with this foot. And I'm just allowing a little bit of light in some areas. I'm gonna zoom back out now, because I find that if I'm too zoomed in on something, then it actually ends up in a worse quality than it technically would have been, because I get so fixated on the details and then I add too much detail and it just doesn't look as free as the other areas. Now I want to add some more shade here. I'm actually really loving that new leg that we made. I think that was the right decision to go with. And I love how round it's looking. There we go. I'm gonna make sure that there is a lot of shadow down there. And I'm allowing it to kind of bleed onto the rest of the capybara as well. As I said, this is going to be so much quicker than all the leaves and the tulips, because we've done that practice now with the leaves and the tulips, and we kind of know now like where we're going with this piece. So the capybara just ends up, we're just matching it to its surroundings. Now in terms of matching, we're actually going to give it a bit of the highlights of the tulips, which will be quite cute. But first, we need to make the snout just a little bit darker. So again, with very low pressure, I'm going to go in here and I'm going to give it, again, a kind of rectangular snout. Just doing that with color and trying to make this part as uniform as possible. So I do want to have a bit of a clear divide here, but not too obvious. There you go. That's it. I'm not entirely happy with this like belly area here. So I'm just going to go in. I'm actually going to use my blend tool and make sure that I'm using the round brush for that as well. And that just blends the colors together a bit better. I rarely use the blend tool at all, but if I do, I make sure that I'm always using the same brush that I am painting with, because otherwise it can look a bit strange. But then again, you might want to go with strange. Strange might be exactly what you're looking for. That's the fun thing with art. Experimentation always leads you in a direction, which, you know, eventually probably results in something quite good. I'm adding a little bit of shade under the head as well. And I think I'm going to blend my colors a little bit here as well. That blend tool can be so useful sometimes, but just be careful, because sometimes it does blend a little bit too well and you get gradients that don't look like what you want them to look like, I guess. Basically, I don't want anything to be too smudged. I like to have a little bit of a visible divide. And I do feel now, looking at this for a second time, that it is not emphasized enough. It needs to be darker. Going in here, and I'm trying to follow my original lines. There we go. Just making that a little bit more visible. And I messed up a little, so I'm going to do it again. There we go. For the nose, I'm making my brush tiny and making that nose really nice and brown. I'm gonna make it darker brown, beautiful dark brown. There we go. And now I want to take a little bit of the red from this tulip, like the orange red probably, and I'm gonna add that inside of the ear here. There you go. And probably just a little bit of the dark red as well. And just to subtle it up again, and just to make it a little bit more subtle, I'm gonna go over it with a Capybara brown in a very, very light layer. There you go. Next up, I want to take a little bit of the highlights that are on the top of my tulips. And I'm gonna set my brush size to right about 23, I think. And again, I'm going in with like a super, super light layer and just adding a little bit of light to this capybara. I don't want it to be too obvious, but I want it to feel like the sun is hitting it. I'm gonna add a little bit on that ear there, but only on the one edge. And then on this ear, gonna emphasize a little bit extra on the bum, because that's a bigger surface area, so it'll get more sun, more love from the sun. Go, and I think just a little bit more here as well. Go. And now, one thing that I really like about capybaras are the way that they have little speckles in their fur. So I want to color dip some of my yellow. And I'm going to bring my brush back up to 100% and make it quite small. I'm putting it around, I think, 11. I'm going to go down here and I'm going to make these little yellow speckles on my capybara. You don't want to add too many of them, but I think that things like that with an animal, if you find that they have cute little traits like that in their appearance and you're making like a stylized version of them, then those little things can be such powerful tools in order to bring your creature to life. And there you have it. Our capybara illustration is now fully covered in, and all we have to do is color in our outline. So let's do that next. First, I'm going to save that color for you guys. There we go. And then I'm going to hide those color profiles because we don't need them at the moment. Now, before I do my outlines, I actually want to go to my background color in Procreate, and I'm just going to set it to a little bit of a warm beige. I like that, it just feels a bit more fun to work with. In my layers panel, I'm going to go to my outlines and I'm going to make, oh, I have reached my maximum layers, but that is all right. I'm just going to delete some. All right, so what I like to do first is to give everything one outline color, just as a starting point. So I'm going to color dip the nose, which is the darkest part of the capybara, and I'm going to make that color darker again. And I'm going to drag that color over to my clipping mask. And now I want the eye to just be a little bit darker than the rest. So I am going to make my color darker, make sure I have the right color, make it a little bit darker and a little bit more saturated, and then go in with a light pressure but full opacity and just do circular motions to add a little bit of depth in that eye. Now here's where it gets a little bit interesting. So I say I don't really use gradients, but when it comes to outlines, it is the exception. So after I do my full fill on the color mask, I'm gonna go down to textures and I'm gonna find, oh, maybe not that. I'm gonna go to airbrushing and I'm gonna find just a soft brush. Any kind of these soft brushes will do the trick. I'm gonna just do the top one. I have selected my darker color than the eye. And now I'm just gonna go in and gently add a little bit of a divide in that color. It's not massively obvious, you can't really tell. I'm gonna do the same thing again. Slightly smaller brush and darker color. But it just adds a little bit of soul to that eye. So if I come out again, you can already see that there's a little bit more life in there. And that's nice, that's very nice. Now for a small moment, I'm gonna go back to my round brush and I'm gonna choose this green or blue teal and I'm gonna make it a lot darker. And I'm gonna go in and just do like a rough coloring of these outlines. So now I'm doing the tulip stems, I'm doing the flowers. And I am trying to not hit the capybara, but if I do hit it a little bit, that's all right. It's fine. It can take a little bit of blending. And there we go. And again, as you can see, I'm doing the circular motions. I love my circular motions with my brush work. And I can see here that I've accidentally made a little bit of a dab on the capybara. So I'm just gonna correct that. There we go. And then come back in here again. And now that that's done, I want to color dip the green grass. And again, same process, make the color a bit darker. I'm not putting full pressure on and I am leaving a few of the darker areas. I'm also trying to follow the highlights. So where I have lighter highlights on the color, I'm also going slightly lighter with the outlines. And now for the tulips, I'm gonna select the darkest color, make it a bit darker. When I'm crossing the line between the green and the red, I put very low pressure on my brush and I kind of blend it together that way. I'm not using the blend brush or the smudge brush. I'm just using my normal brush in order to layer that up. Whereas when I'm out on the proper petals of the flowers, I go full in with a very, a normal pressure, hard pressure on the flower. And there we go. For the orange ones or the yellow ones, I'm going to start with the red at the bottom. But then I'm quickly going to make them a bit more yellow again. So I'm going to color dip their darkest color, make it a bit darker. That one is orange. I wonder how that's going to look. And then you just repeat with your other flowers. Again, I'm never super strict with this. I think when I'm drawing this, I am trying to be a bit more specific because I'm sharing my process with you. But if I was drawing for myself, it's worth noting that I wouldn't necessarily be super strict with where I'm placing my colors. I would kind of just dab them onto the canvas, see how it looks, and if I don't like it, I will correct it. But it wouldn't be fair to you to keep you here for 10 to 12 hours while I try to decide on my color. I think in order for this video to be a bit more watchable, I've just tried to make it a bit more condensed. And guess what? You finished! Here is your capybara. Now, before we go, let me show you some cool tricks that you can do. One of them is if you go in under your like white layer that we made, if you make a new layer and choose a round, and then choose like for example this blue and make it just a little bit more desaturated and subtle. I'm gonna make it a bit more blue as well. We're gonna draw a sphere like that. And now we have full control of our sphere, or ellipse, I guess. Go. We can now fill this in. Remember to draw like the full thing. And ta-da! You have a background if you ever wanted to like do that. And we did it! We finished our capybara! I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I hope you found it useful. I am desperate to see what kind of drawings you came up with during this tutorial. So if you did follow along and draw your own capybara, please, please, please tag me on social media. I would love to see it. My username is Evie Benita on all of the platforms that I'm on, like TikTok, Instagram, Blue Sky, Threads. And you can also use my new hashtag, #DrawWithEvie, and I will keep an eye on that. If you want t-shirts or any kind of merch with my capybara drawing on it, I do have a Redbubble store, so I will link that below for you guys. If you want to see more from me, please subscribe to my channel. I do tutorials on Tuesdays and art vlogs on Fridays. This is my first drawing tutorial, so if you found anything irritating or annoying or anything you'd like more clarification on, please let me know, because I want to make these as good as I possibly can for you guys. Any kind of animal requests in the comments as well, always welcome. And yeah, I will see you next time, I hope. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye then.